So before playing the Haitian game, the first thing I did was part A of the assignment, so that included doing what I think engineers could do in a situation like this. So the first things I did when I listed that off were they can help with cleanup and construction, so obviously engineers are going to be the one that are kind of designing things out, how things get cleaned up, because obviously after earthquake or flood, there's going to be a lot of rubble that needs to get taken care of. The second thing is that there's a possibility normal equipment won't work. This doesn't necessarily apply in an earthquake scenario, but it does certainly apply in a flood scenario. So if somewhere's flooded, you obviously can't go in there with an excavator and fill up dump trucks. It's just not going to work the same. So you're either going to have to wait for it to drain, or you're going to have to find alternative solutions. Like you could, for example, put excavators on a barge, but at the same time, you're going to be polluting a lot of house material into the flooded water. It might just be better to wait. That's an engineer's call. It's just finding creative ways to get to your solution. Other ways I said they could have helped are just make specialized equipment for that time instance. So you don't know if in an earthquake they need specialized things that aren't related to rubble cleanup. Maybe they need special barriers. They need any other type of just speciality. It's just so they're going to help design that and get it into place. And just the other thing, unorthodox techniques. That's a big thing that you guys have already been pushing at Wentworth Engineering, is just thinking outside the box. So, like I said, like, oh, we'll get an excavator and clean up the rubble. Well, that might not be so simple. So instead, you're going to find unorthodox solutions to solve your problems. But the biggest part of the assignment, which is to talk about when I was an aid worker, that was pretty eye-opening to me because I didn't think about the different routes that people have to go through to do that and how it would work. So while I was thinking about how everything worked and how it said there were 900 or more NGOs or non-governmental organizations trying to help out in the earthquake. It's just really interesting to see how those all come together. So the biggest thing that I did when I was doing that was just I had to find the best way to make everything work. So like the first thing I did, I thought, oh well, I'll just go to the UN and then they'll set everything up. I'll just give them my aid and they'll take care of it. But when they described how overwhelmed they were and how that's not really going to work, you kind of have the thought that, oh, I'll just take it into my own hands. I'll drive around with my stuff and find where it's most needed. The biggest thing with that is, one, you have no control. People are obviously super hungry and they're just kind of going to raid your truck because that's what people do in situations like that. It's just kind of how things happen. So the only way that you thought next to it was the military was offering security. So you thought you'll take their security detail and get the food out. But as it was seen, people were being held back by a really weak barrier. It just got pushed over. People raided the area. Excuse me, that was when the police were holding a line. It's a little different from the military, but at the end of the day, the military still just uses a first-come, first-served basis, and that really only helps people that are the strongest, that can fight their way to the front of the truck and carry the food out. That's not helping pregnant mothers. That's not helping people with injured limbs. It's just helping the people who need the aid less in most situations. Obviously, people who need aid can still get it, but it's not a great system. So you thought, okay, well, I can't use the military anymore. You already know the UN can't work, so you try other options. You find out the Red Cross has a very effective system, which is somewhat non-interventionary in terms of needing the military, and it's also very safe. So they put people on a list, and they actually prioritize who needs it most. So they give pregnant women the food first because they're feeding 2 people directly. Other mothers are put first because they're either most likely caring for themselves or children. Just kind of how things work. Today's society, you might think that's a little off-kilter, so they're like woman first and men second, but like in most realistic situations, especially in that, women are going to be pregnant and women naturally kind of act as caregivers, especially in survival scenarios. It's kind of like how things usually work out. So the Red Cross knows that, and they want to give the aid where it's going to be most effective. So they want to get it to the woman and the probably copious amounts of children they're going to be taken care of. And then there's still men that are involved, because especially if just a mother was killed in an earthquake, those children still need to eat. Fathers can do the same thing. If they're taking care of kids, there's nothing against that, obviously. They just want to get the aid out to the people that the highest percentage of the time are going to be able to help the most people. And then after you kind of cross all those paths, you realize going out on your own isn't the best deal. You might think, oh, I want to help right now. We got to do this right now, or else it's not going to help anybody. But in the long game, you understand sometimes you got to take a moment, sit back. You have to find the most effective solution, which in this case was something that the Red Cross did. You working alone doesn't help. The UN was just kind of overwhelmed. The military system, while it was like safe, it wasn't exactly effective. Sometimes you have to sit back, and you can't let people riot. So obviously, the Red Cross had a good compound set up. You had to have a ticket to get in. And obviously, it was in a very well fenced-in area. It didn't show it, but I'm sure it was guarded by armed guards. Just to make sure that nobody's going to be breaking in and doing anything they shouldn't. So the biggest thing is maintain order, keep your patience, and just make sure the aid's going to get out. It's going to get out eventually. It's not just going to sit somewhere. You just have to find the most effective way to get out. People might have to wait, and you might think that there's dire seconds where people need food right now, and that is true. There's people that maybe if they don't get aid right now, they might suffer from that. But in the long game, you're trying to help the largest amount of people possible, and sometimes you do have to take a step back and just think about it a little more. The other biggest thing when we circle back to how I thought part A, which was how engineers can help after I went through the journey map, is definitely engineers should be doing as much as they can to set things up like the Red Cross, so it's an enclosed compound, it's guarded, no one can rush it, where they can deliver aid effectively in a coordinated fashion, so people aren't just running up and taking whatever they want. That's very effective for engineers. The other biggest thing is still one of the main points that I said before going through the map, and that is that they need to get in and they need to start clearing rubble. One of the disgusting things I found was the treatment of people's dead bodies. I know, personally, like when I say I die, I'm like, oh, whatever, I'm dead, I'll be fine, but it was kind of unsettling to see that they were just using excavators to scoop up rubble, and they were scooping up human bodies with that and just kind of dumping it into dump trucks. That was kind of disturbing to see. So there should be a humane fashion, but also in situations like that, you kind of just gotta pony up and you gotta rebuild. Like you saw in the camps, they already started rebuilding some structures. They probably weren't gonna be someone's house, but they were a permanent structure that would stay there and be sustainable for people. And I'm talking from experience when I say this too. The tornadoes that went through Massachusetts not only came through my town, they actually took out my street. They took out houses on my street. I own 50 acres. They took out about 12 acres on the back end of my property. So, I mean, the tornado hit, and that day my dad went out with some neighbors. They took my tractor and chainsaws, and they started clearing the road. They put a little dent in it until the hydraulics blew, but, I mean, you can only do so much. And the next day, there's a heavy power equipment place up the road, so first thing in the morning, they started clearing. Bobcats, excavators, everybody with a hat of chainsaw was out there. And in 2 days, they had the road cleared. National Grid had power up within a week. National Grid had power up within 3 days after the tornado, which is amazing because when you think of the October snowstorm, it took more than a week to get power, and we had it in 3 days, and they had to put in new telephone poles, they had to clear the whole road, they had to redo everything. So that's one of the biggest ways engineers can help out, because it's a huge morale booster to the people, is that you got to rebuild, you got to start somewhere. You can't just kind of mope around, oh, life sucks, this is never going to be the same, and life does suck. It's probably never going to be exactly the same, but you got to do what you can to move on. And that's one of the biggest ways engineers can help, because the morale boost from people getting food is just as much as people seeing buildings rebuilt, not seeing their houses in rubble, just a clear spot where they can start again. And that's pretty much the summary of everything. Just a little key points. I tried to place as realistically possible as I would. So when I was a survivor, it was kind of what I thought about, because I was actually home when the tornado happened. So I was kind of like, went outside, checked on my neighbors, made sure everyone was good. After we made sure everyone around us was good, we kind of did a damage assessment, which is kind of what happened when I played through this scenario. So we just went through, like one of my neighbor's houses was completely leveled. We made sure she was good. She was trapped in the basement. She had worked her way up by the time we got down there. We just went like up and down the road, found out, made sure everybody was safe, which everyone was except for one house. And in that case, neighbors went down. I was much younger at this point. This was in 2011. So neighbors went down with chainsaws. They kind of got them out of there, because that's what you need to do. You need to check on everybody, make sure. And then the next thing was just kind of, you got to help. In this situation, it was going to town center, and my situation was everyone working together trying to clear out our street from all the trees that were on it. As a journalist, the biggest thing was, especially in recent times, it's been pointed out how the media can be really biased. They just want to sell a juicy story. So I did the best when I could to sell the effective story, say, hey, military aid isn't working. At the same time, people aren't cooperating, but understandably, people need food. They're not going to be as patient as you normally think. And obviously, we went really in depth when I was an aid worker with how I think that played out. So I don't want to drag this on too long. That was my thoughts on the exercise. I thought it was actually really effective. And it was a great eye-opening experience, because the Haiti earthquake happened when I was a little younger. I didn't know much about it, and I was really happy to learn about it. Thanks.